everyone, and welcome to Geotab's Wildcard Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us today. As I'm sure you all know, my name is Shay Green, and I'm a Sales Enablement Manager here at Geotab. For today's session, we're going to be hearing from Neil Medchill, a Sales Manager here at Geotab, who's going to be speaking on leveraging the power of data to accelerate your 2021 strategies. And with that, I'll hand things over to Neil to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you, Shay. As Shay alluded to, I'm Neil Medchill, Sales Manager based in Houston, Texas. I spent the last 3 years at Geotab supporting mostly carriers and fleet management companies, working with companies from anywhere between one vehicle into the thousands, and then also with government, local municipalities, all the way up to state agencies. So the purpose of today's call is to really discuss how to leverage some of Geotab's data sets to accelerate your 2021 strategy with the power of data. So to start off, we're going to go over a little agenda. I'm going to introduce you to Geotab's Ignition, a few use cases, then we'll jump into the Ignition UI. We'll go over some white papers and data sheets before we finally head over to the Q&A section of this presentation. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of big data. It's obviously a huge buzzword, something at Geotab we're quite proud of, pulling billions of data points a day. But perhaps you don't have a data scientist, right? Or you don't have access to Google BigQuery, and you're not quite ready to dive into that data science package yet, whether it's fleet size or just other constraints, right? So what we've done is we created this great tool called Geotab Ignition. So what we do is all those billions of data points, we collect them from commercial vehicles, we clean them, aggregate them, and anonymize them into data sets. So really, what does that mean? This tool is used to it's more of an exploratory tool. And so what it allows you to do is you interact with the data sets, run queries against them, and visualize them on a map. I know that there's probably resellers on this call as well. So it's very different than having a service account where we're doing customized integrations where it's only data for your fleet and we're doing benchmarking and things like that. What this tool uses, it uses SQL, and we have a number of data sets or queries that we can run off of, and it still can give you some really valuable insight and help you with your business. So some of those data insights are pulled in from 4 major categories. First one is urban infrastructure, second one being location analytics, 3 is weather, and 4 is COVID mobility impact. So starting from the beginning, perhaps you've seen this on data.geotab.com. But this is the Ignition login page. It is ignition.geotab.com. You just say that you're an existing MyGeotab customer. You put in your username, password, and your database assigned to you. And then you log in. And I will say, I'm sure it'll come up in the Q&A, but this is completely free for our customers. So jumping into it, I'm going to do my best to stay pretty high level. The whole point of this is, I'm not Bob Bradley and part of the data team, right? I'm not going to go into tables and SQL too much. I'm going to try to stay high level here, and just to help allow an everyday user to actually use this program. So on the left-hand side, you'll see the 4 major categories I referred to earlier: COVID mobility impact, location, urban infrastructure, and weather. If I hover over one of these metrics, what pulls up is a little bit about what that table or data set is bringing. So I can see that the location of that fuel station metrics, I can see that in this data set, there's 130,000 rows of data. And then what's nice is it gives you a nice clean description. What am I looking at? So this particular instance, this data set represents the location of fuel stations and various metrics associated with these stations, including popular hours, fuel type, and vehicle type. Data is based on previous 6 months of data and updated on a monthly basis. Now, you can always come in here and click more information, and this will actually take you out to a white paper and actual data sets, which we'll get into a little bit later from here. But just wanted to, again, kind of show you before we jump into the UI, kind of what you're really looking at when you first log in. Next, we have the sample visualizations tab. So in here, we can see things like commercial traffic analysis. We have weather, airport traffic analysis of popular airports in US and Canada. So we have all these data sets that we're going to go over at the end to kind of show you how to play with this tool. Okay, so how do you use it? Today we're going to talk about things with routing, parking, trucking, courier delivery, and even government. So the idea is just how scalable this product is, regardless of vertical or size. First one we're going to talk about is routing and road impediments. So you can see here from this data set that we're looking at urban infrastructure, where state equals Utah and city equals West Valley City. Now, if I run this query, I can go ahead and hit visualize, and I see all the possible speed bumps, if you will, or things in the road in the city. Now, if I zoom in, I can see that this is yellow instead of green. What's going on here? I can actually drag and drop and see that, there is in fact, a pothole, a speed bump, something associated to that. I mentioned in the beginning that all the data is cleaned and aggregated. So what that means is this isn't just some guy speeding down his road every day and it's showing up on your map. It's actually coming from at least 3 different databases and vehicles. So we have the Geotab device plugged into those vehicles, and that data is actually pulling from 3 different companies that have hit that same speed bump or pothole or whatever it may be. Now, one thing, bringing it back to routing, is something that's kind of interesting is studies show that passenger vehicles had an increase of up to 3% in fuel usage, regardless of speed on poor roads, right? So if you're doing $250,000 in fuel, can you save $7,500, right, by adjusting, routes? Continuing with the routing theme, this is an example, a data set in a sample query where hazardous driving areas in Mexico City. Now, if you look at this, you can say, well, I can go down to the street level here. I can drag and drop, see that there's having issues at this intersection. Well, it makes sense why they're having issues at this intersection. It's kind of chaotic, right? So maybe I'm using the plan versus actual report today in my Geotab, and now I can do routing and try to route my drivers and keep them clear of this hazardous intersection. Next one I want to talk about quickly is parking. This is an example here of one of our white papers, and this talks about exploring parking in Toronto. So what we've done is we've created a heat map. Okay, so it shows problematic areas when searching for parking. So in the map, red spots indicate where Toronto drivers have difficulty searching for parking. Pretty self-explanatory, right? So how do you use this? Right? If you're a parking development, you can assist city management with parking development or route planning, right? If you're a delivery, you can assist your fleets in selecting parking destinations in those major cities. Studies show driver searching for parking not only causes frustration, but it also contributes to more traffic and additional greenhouse gas emissions. So really important stuff that you can use for your fleet in a number of different ways here. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about nighttime truck parking locations. So we have a lot of Class 8 vehicles out there. This particular query you can see is running from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. And it's going to show us, okay, this is from a sample query showing truck parking locations in Texas. But what I can do is I can just test out and city equals Houston. And I can go ahead and run this query, and I can actually visualize this on the map. So a driver calls me and says, hey, I'm coming into Houston, where's a good spot to park, right? Are they busy, are they not busy? I could actually come on here, go down to the street level view and see if this is a good parking location for my driver. Here's one for border wait times. One of the data sets that you saw earlier was the COVID mobility impact. So under that, we have something called border wait times. Now, in one of the data sets, I pulled this sample query. So if you're looking at this going, okay, select border ID, trip direction, I don't know what all that means, right? Well, I understand where local date is. That's date and time I'm looking for this, right? And I see border ID, Mexico 21. Okay, I could probably look that up on Google, right? What border ID am I looking for? Could I swap that out? Trip direction US to Mexico and run it this way. So if I run this query, you can see that I get an error here. It says select type geography column to visualize in the map. So this particular one I've played with it and I've tested it, and I don't have the ability to graph it. But if you look at it, it still gives us valuable data. So if you look at this, what this is actually showing is showing that actual date and time that we were searching for. It'll show the local hour and the average duration of wait time. Right? So if I'm looking at this, going from the US to Mexico, I'm not going to send them at 7 a.m. because my driver's going to have to wait there on average at least 15 extra minutes. Last one before we jump into the UI is we're going to chat a little bit about idling. So I've worked with this personally with a state agency. You know, governors have certain clean air bills and initiatives that they're pushing, and they want to know where folks are idling at. So this is a good example. Again, when you click on idling over here, it's going to pull all these different things. And what's great about it is, you know, for you and I might not really understand what those mean. If you hover over it, it'll actually tell you what each individual thing can do. So you can copy and paste %HDT, knowing that those are heavy duty vehicles, right? I want to know who's idling, of the people that are idling, which ones are heavy duty. So I can actually add average idle time HDT, and it's going to add it to this query set. So then I see things like where state like Texas, city like Houston, average order by average idle time, okay. And then I see limit 15. So now this is going to tell me, I just want to see my top 15 locations of where I'm idling at, right? And heavy duty. So if I'm in Houston, I might be looking at this and saying, well, if I just pull everybody, you know, I know they're working on Highway 288. There's a lot of big trucks working on that freeway right now. I'm probably going to be getting a lot of that data, and maybe I don't want it, right? So then I could swap it out for just cars. And these are going to tell me all the different locations where we're having issues. You know, if I work for the city, am I dealing with traffic light issues, things like that? Again, trying to improve our air quality index. Or if I want to know what my average idle time is where there's heavy duty trucks, I might want to, heavy duty trucks obviously cause a little bit more, tend to cause more traffic. Maybe I want to avoid those locations. So hopefully you guys got a basic overview kind of what it is. So what I want to do here is actually want to dive into Geotab Ignition and kind of show you how to maneuver and play around a little bit. So when we come here, these are those sample queries that I was talking about earlier. Right? We have things like commercial traffic analysis, hyperlocal probability, precipitation across the UK, you know, air pressure across Toronto, a lot of great things. You know, maybe your local delivery, and you say traffic analysis of popular airports in US and Canada. You know, maybe I'm a flower shop delivering flowers, and their flowers are coming into LAX, and I want to know in LA when it makes sense for me to go pick up those flowers. Right? Little things like that where, yes, this isn't your particular fleet. How can I still leverage this data to make use of it? So let's talk about this New York City fuel stations by popularity, something I kind of already showed you earlier, so hopefully it looks a little familiar. When I click on this, it's going to tell me exactly what the query is. Used for determining the popular fuel stations, which offers gas or diesel, or both. The popularity scores in New York. Higher the number, more popular the station is. If I'm looking at this, select location, popularity score, as gas equals 0, you know, maybe, you know, you've worked in Excel, so you're thinking, you know, 0, you know, 1, you know, you think you might have an idea of true false kind of a scenario, right? But really, you know, how do I use this data set? So I can see here that public intelligence, this is where it's coming from, fuel station metrics. So if I hover over it, it'll tell me what those things are, and it'll also give me all these different things. So much like what we saw earlier with, if I want to section out percentage of vehicles that are heavy duty trucks, I can do that. All right, so if I see here US New York and city equals New York, if I visualize that on the map, it'll show me a lot of spots in New York that are pretty popular, right? So a couple things how I honestly started learning this myself. is I'm saying, okay, well, how do I don't really understand what ISO is. I just saw something that said where Texas equals Houston. That seemed way easier. I'm not sure what ISO is. That's okay, right? And I also saw something earlier when we were just looking at idling that limit equaled 15, right? Okay, well, let's try it, right? Limit, let's call it 25. Can I do it more than just 15? I get back a valid request here. So I can run that query and then I can visualize this on the map. I'll say, okay, great. Now I have my top 25 locations in the area. Okay. Say, okay, well, I noticed, I went to something else here and I noticed I was looking at air pressure across Toronto. If I click on that, and I look at this, it says this query is used for determining air pressure in a specific geobound in Toronto over the last 24 hours. So this looks completely different, right? Looks way easier. Geohash bounds pressure, sure. Or state Ontario equals city Toronto. See what happens if I copy this and jump back over to Toronto, right? Can I run this query and visualize this? Okay, so now I get back New York. I'm thinking, okay, well, if I zoom out here, it does in fact pull that Toronto data. So maybe what I try to do is maybe I just take this, try to create a new one. Say, okay, well, let me just create this, and you know what? I'm gonna go back to Texas, and I wanna check out Houston. I can now visualize this on a map, and now I have my top 25 locations in Houston. I can even zoom in here. Here you can adjust all the colors, we can set all the metrics. All this is customizable by yourself. I'm not gonna spend time on it today, but we have a great document that shows you how to adjust all those things. Another thing too is if I zoom in here, you can, maybe this scale is too big, right? I wanna see this much smaller, 0.2, because I wanna drop it exactly where it's at on the map. And I like to make it a little bit lighter too, so I can actually see it. I could actually come over here, drag and drop this in here, and I can see the exact fuel station where I'm at, okay? So from here, you could literally just save this, right? You could save this, and then you could have your own queries, right? So you could save this fuel Houston, and you can now save this metric, right? So now you can pop it back and forth and go and check out certain spots, especially if you go there often. Okay, so now I've done this. So although it's kind of a cool tool, right? Like, how do I really use this thing? So that's where some of our metrics really are helpful. So I can come here and I can come over to more information. And this is going to take me to my data page here. So I can come here and this is going to give me a whole white paper on fuel station metrics. Really great documentation by folks off our data team, right? Talks about, next to major roadways, routing, but this is what's cool. And all these things, it gives you insight to action. How do you actually use these data sets for yourself? Fueling efficiency on routes. So without, going through all the data points and just reading this slide, or this page rather, like this is a good example. Determine best fuel station for the driver to stop at. So the next step would be to look at hourly customer visits. If the driver's looking for gas at around 2 p.m., you can see from the graph below, location 1 is better since it has a lower percentage of occupancy for that hour, 5% versus 14%. So that's just a very basic example of how to use some of this data. I told you guys earlier how I used some data around border wait times. Well, I didn't, I literally just copied and pasted off of some sample code in something like this in these data sets. Okay, it actually gives you great examples here. Or from white paper, you can come over to just the data sheet itself, and I'll actually tell you what each field means. So from here, there's all sorts of additional things that we can do. We talked a little bit about, like this is the city of Houston and idling, something that you saw earlier, right, where you can change that 15 and you can add certain metrics. One thing I want to show you before jumping over is when you do pull these, you see this table here, okay? So you can say, well, urban infrastructure, idling areas, what data is in here? I'm confused on what I'm even running, okay? So just know that all these things in here are what's in the table. So idling areas, urban infrastructure, right? So I can go to urban infrastructure, idling areas, and these are it's gonna show me what's available in these data sets. So if for whatever reason you're not seeing a data set that you'd like, maybe it's a certain border. I'm in Houston, so obviously I deal with quite a few folks in the Texas market, going from Laredo and whatnot. But if you see a border that info on or can't figure it out, there's a great Geotab community group to ask questions, or reach out to your reseller, or if your reseller doesn't know, they can always reach out to their partner account manager. So from there, I want to come over to, I know it's kind of a lot, but what I wanted to do today, if you take anything away from it, was to really show you just how easy it is with not getting overwhelmed into the details of that big data. Now, this is a great landing page that we'll be sure to get you after the call on the link. But there's this Getting Started tab, data.geotab.com//connect, Getting Started. So Getting Started will take you to this great landing page where it will take you literally step by step how to go through this, how to visualize it. If you have that air for location, it'll give you some things like geography panel. It tells you what you need and what you don't need in order to make it work. And maybe you find yourself wanting to spend more time on it at night, and you want to just learn more yourself. So we have a great tool here for more information on SQL, understanding a little bit more about how that works. It'll take you to this site, or actually shows you, and you can actually spend the time to actually break this stuff down. And then finally, any questions? Hopefully most of you guys are already part of our Geotab community group. But there is actually a separate group for Geotab ignition questions. And we have some of our solutions engineering team to answer those for you. So that concludes the presentation for today. But before we jump over to Q&A, I want to tell you a little bit about Wildcard Wednesday coming up next. You guys are in for a real treat. Wednesday, November 18th, Mark Pyle is going to be talking about 3G sunset, what it is and why does it matter to me. Mark's been around the industry for quite some time, extremely knowledgeable, and so hopefully you guys can all take some time out of your day to join that one as well. And with that, Shay, I will pass it back over to you and open it up for a little Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Neil. A great presentation, by the way. The first question that we have for you here is, do I need special permission or special access to get into Ignition?
Great question. So in that data sheet, when it talks about frequently asked questions and getting started, when you go to that page, it'll explain it out to you. But yes, I would imagine there is a hierarchy level of access to get access to this. We'll have to circle up to see exactly what that access level is and the parameters around it. But great question, something we can definitely circle back with.
Awesome. Next question that we have for you, Neil, is can you show again where to find the white papers associated with the specific data sets?
So in Geotab Ignition, going back to kind of highlighting some of the major categories, right? If we look at urban infrastructure, for instance, and idling areas, I can come over here and I can hit more information. When I come into more information, it's going to pull areas of idling. It's going to show urban infrastructure. It'll then show that all the description, insight to action, all the things that I talked about earlier. Again, sample queries for SQL. I can just copy and paste that into it. I can read more. there's all sorts of different things that you can get into. Obviously, we just kind of hit it all high level today. And then right next to, it's going to automatically open in the white paper. And then if you just click to the right, it's going to have the data sheet for that as well. And yes, you could just always, for that, things that we were just looking at, road impediments, we can talk about that as well. That's all going to be in here under that same list of data sets. But they can be found when you hover over it and just hitting more information.
Perfect. Next question that we've got for you here is, can any of this information be exported into reports?
Absolutely. So you can take this data and export it to either JSON or a CSV file. So you can see that the CSV has limits up to 50,000 rows. But yes, you can absolutely export this data.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Neil. It looks like that's actually all the questions that we have. That makes it a wrap for this week's Wildcard Wednesday. Again, a big thank you to Neil for joining us today, sharing the presentation and answering the questions that we had. If you guys do have any further questions regarding today's topic, don't hesitate to reach out to your reseller or your account manager. And if they need, they can reach out directly to us and we'll get those answered for you. Until next time, my name is Shay Green, and I want to thank everyone for joining us today on Wildcard Wednesday. We'll see you guys next time. Same Geotab time, same Geotab channel. Thanks so much, everybody.